Last night's dream was not imagination, not memory replaying tricks, not your mind wandering in sleep, because the moment you opened your eyes there was a weight on your chest you could not explain, a silence that felt louder than sound, and Archangel Michael stood at the edge of that silence holding a warning that had not yet reached you but was already moving toward your life. My beloved child, stay till the end, something huge is waiting for you. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Listen carefully. What you saw was not symbolic comfort but prophetic interruption, because heaven does not disturb sleep unless something ahead requires preparation now. And as your breath slowed in the darkness, Michael watched a shadow approach the borders of your timeline, not touching you yet, not allowed to reach you yet, but close enough that heaven released a signal through a dream instead of thunder. You felt it when you woke up, that uneasy calm, that strange peace mixed with alertness, because your spirit recognized a frequency your mind could not name, the same way ancient watchmen felt before invasion when the city still slept, and this is why Michael appeared not with rage but with restraint, sword lowered but hand firm, because warnings come before battles and mercy always arrives before consequence. Somewhere in your life there is a delay you thought was rejection, a door that did not open when you begged, a message that never came, a person who stopped responding, and you blamed yourself, but heaven allowed that delay because something dangerous was attached to the timing you were demanding, and Michael stepped into slow time itself, bending moments, redirecting paths, quietly pushing events out of alignment so harm could miss you by inches. Don't blink. In the dream, even if you do not remember faces, there was a feeling of being watched, not hunted, not threatened, but examined, like a courtroom without walls where your choices were being weighed, and this is because unseen agreements were being reviewed over your life, spiritual attachments formed through pain, loyalty, silence, or fear, contracts you did not sign with ink but with endurance. And Michael was present because he is the defender in such courts, the one who speaks when you have no words, the one who interrupts accusations before they become verdicts. History records that Michael is named in ancient scripture as the great prince who stands watch over humanity, a protector mentioned in the book of Daniel during times of unseen conflict, and that role has never ended, only intensified, because modern lives still carry ancient battles dressed in modern clothes. Listen carefully. There is a hidden enemy, not always a person, sometimes a pattern, sometimes a belief, sometimes a repeating wound, that has been circling your destiny waiting for access, waiting for the exact moment you feel tired enough to lower your guard. And the dream was heaven's way of whispering before shouting, of nudging before forcing, of protecting your free will while still offering guidance. You are not weak for feeling shaken by it. You are aware. You are awakening. Michael did not show you everything because full revelation too early can overwhelm the human heart, but he showed you enough to alert your spirit, to make you pause, to make you listen today instead of rushing into the same routine that almost placed you in collision with what was approaching. Don't scroll. Somewhere ahead there is a conversation you have not had yet, a decision you have not made yet, an invitation you have not received yet, and attached to it is either elevation or entanglement, blessing or burden, and heaven is asking you to slow down, to stop forcing outcomes, to stop chasing validation, to stop reopening doors God already closed quietly for your protection. This warning is not meant to scare you but to strengthen you, because fear paralyzes but awareness empowers, and the very fact that you were warned proves that what is coming does not have permission to destroy you. Michael does not arrive for defeats already decided. He arrives when outcomes are still flexible. In the dream you may have sensed movement, footsteps, wind, or light shifting direction, because time itself adjusted around you, and this is what happens when divine intervention takes place without spectacle, when heaven moves subtly so your life can remain intact without chaos. There is also a blessing traveling toward you, but blessings and tests often share the same road, arriving from opposite directions, and discernment determines which one reaches you first. This is why your spirit is being sharpened now. This is why distractions are losing their taste. This is why old habits feel heavier than before. Michael is not asking for perfection, only attention. Like the video gently if this message resonates with your spirit. Comment Amen as a sign of agreement with divine protection, and share this message with 10 people so that Jesus or Archangel Michael may release a blessing not only over your life but over theirs as well, because warnings shared become shields multiplied. Don't blink. What has not reached you yet has already been stopped once, delayed twice, and rerouted 3 times, and the reason it still exists at all is because it carries a lesson meant to mature you, not to break you. The dream was the first signal. This message is the second. What comes next will require calm obedience, not panic, quiet confidence, not noise, and as heaven watches you now, the courtroom remains open, the sword remains ready, and your destiny remains defended, as long as you continue to listen. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Listen carefully, because after the warning comes revelation, and what Michael began in the dream now unfolds in waking awareness, not as panic but as clarity slowly rising like light behind closed eyes, because heaven never rushes truth, it reveals it in layers your soul can survive. The reason the warning felt unfinished is because what is approaching you is not a single event but a convergence, multiple paths folding into one moment, and your spirit sensed the pressure of that convergence before your mind could label it. There is someone connected to your future who is not yet aligned with truth, not fully honest, not fully healed, and their delay has been mistaken by you as absence, but in reality it is restraint, because premature connection would have created damage instead of destiny. Michael sees timelines the way humans see roads, branching, merging, collapsing, and in your case he placed his hand across one path gently but firmly, preventing you from walking into an emotional agreement that would have drained you slowly while calling itself love. This is not condemnation. This is protection. Don't blink. Hidden enemies are not always obvious faces, sometimes they are unresolved attachments that whisper familiarity, sometimes they are voices from the past that sound like comfort but carry old poison, sometimes they are internal vows you made during pain, promises like, "I will never trust again," or "I must handle everything alone," and these vows create spiritual doors that attract resistance to your blessings. The dream exposed one such door without naming it, because heaven wanted you to feel it rather than analyze it, to recognize the weight instead of arguing with the meaning. There is a reason certain blessings have felt close but unreachable, like money opportunities that almost worked, connections that almost aligned, peace that almost settled, because something unseen has been demanding tolls on your progress, draining momentum just before breakthrough. Michael stands in divine courtrooms where such demands are challenged, and in your case evidence has been presented, moments of endurance, acts of integrity, silent faith when no one was watching, and these have shifted verdicts in your favor. Historically, courts and councils were central to ancient governance, and even in Roman times decisions affecting entire nations were made in chambers few citizens ever saw, and the spiritual realm operates with similar order, where unseen decisions precede visible change. Don't scroll. The warning was issued because the verdict is changing. What was once permitted to delay you is losing authority, but transitions create turbulence, and turbulence is often mistaken for attack. You may feel resistance increase briefly, miscommunication, sudden tiredness, distractions trying to pull you back into old loops, because when something is about to lose control, it tightens its grip one last time. This is not failure. This is confirmation. Michael does not fight for those without assignment, and your life has been marked not for survival alone but for influence, not necessarily loud influence, but stabilizing presence, the kind that calms rooms, grounds families, redirects outcomes quietly. Somewhere ahead there is a financial shift that will require wisdom more than excitement, because sudden provision without discipline becomes another form of bondage, and heaven is training your discernment now so blessing does not become burden. Don't blink. You have wondered why your compassion feels deeper than most, why you sense moods before words, why injustice unsettles you more than others, and this is because your spirit has been positioned as an intercessor long before you understood the word, someone whose awareness alters outcomes simply by refusing to ignore truth. Michael recognizes this role and guards such souls closely, because sensitivity without protection would crush you, and strength without compassion would harden you, but the balance you carry is intentional. The dream also brushed against your fear of repeating old cycles, of ending up in the same emotional place despite different faces and settings, and heaven acknowledged that fear not to shame you but to reassure you that repetition is not your destiny. Awareness breaks cycles, and you are no longer walking blind. Don't scroll. There is a soulmate-level connection aligned to your future, but it requires both timing and readiness, not just desire, and what has not reached you yet includes that alignment, delayed not denied, protected not withheld. When the moment comes, it will feel calm, not chaotic, familiar but not draining, and your spirit will not need to convince itself. Until then, Michael asks for patience, not passivity, intentional living without obsession, faith without force. The warning was heaven's way of saying slow down so you can arrive intact. The sword you did not see raised in the dream is still present, held steady, because battles are being resolved before they ever touch your skin, and the very stillness you feel now is evidence that something unseen is being handled on your behalf, even as time bends quietly around your life. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Listen carefully, because what was sensed as warning and revealed as restraint now moves into confrontation, not the kind that shouts or explodes, but the kind that happens in silence when truth stands up and falsehood has nowhere left to sit, and Michael steps fully into view not as a distant guardian but as an active defender of your future. The pressure you have been feeling lately is not random, not exhaustion alone, not confusion without cause, but the result of opposing forces realizing that time is no longer on their side, because something about you has shifted quietly, internally, in ways that cannot be reversed, and heaven responds to such shifts with acceleration. There is a moment approaching where you will be asked to choose without all the information, to move without full certainty, to trust discernment over logic, and this is why Michael allowed the dream to precede the decision, so your spirit would recognize the weight of the moment when it arrives. In the unseen realm, a courtroom stands open, vast and calm, not chaotic, not dramatic, filled with light that does not blind but exposes, and your life is being discussed there not because you are on trial but because your destiny is being defended against outdated claims. Accusations have been raised, not by strangers but by familiar patterns, by past versions of yourself that survived by shrinking, by voices that once kept you safe but no longer serve where you are going, and these voices argue that you should stay small, stay cautious, stay hidden, but Michael counters with evidence drawn from your endurance, moments when you chose integrity over convenience, compassion over retaliation, patience over impulse, and these moments carry legal weight in spiritual realms. Historically, even ancient Jewish tradition spoke of heavenly councils where angels stood as witnesses, a concept echoed across cultures, reminding humanity that unseen order governs visible outcomes, and you are not excluded from that order. Don't blink. As the arguments unfold, something unexpected happens, a revelation not about your enemy but about your strength, because the greatest threat to opposition is not your success but your awareness, the moment you stop doubting your intuition and start trusting the quiet confirmations that have guided you all along. You have ignored these confirmations before, thinking them irrational, emotional, impractical, and each time the cost was delay, not punishment, but unnecessary weight, and heaven has grown tired of watching you carry burdens that were never assigned to you. There is also a financial thread being addressed, a pattern of scarcity that does not reflect your effort or value, and this pattern is being challenged not through sudden wealth but through realignment, new structures, disciplined opportunities, and favor that appears ordinary on the surface but multiplies quietly over time. Ancient history reminds us that Joseph rose to provision not through instant riches but through preparation and discernment, and this principle still governs sustainable blessing. Don't scroll. The confrontation also touches your relationships, because there is someone who benefits from your self-doubt, someone who is comfortable when you question your worth, not necessarily malicious, but attached to the version of you that required less accountability, and as you change, their access changes, creating tension that may soon surface as misunderstanding or distance. This is not loss. This is recalibration. Michael does not force separation, but he exposes truth, allowing you to choose alignment over familiarity. In the courtroom, a final objection is raised, an attempt to delay the verdict by reminding heaven of your past mistakes, but the response is immediate and firm, because redemption has already been accounted for, growth has already been documented, and mercy has already been applied, rendering those objections invalid. Don't blink. You may soon notice small but significant shifts, invitations that align unexpectedly, clarity replacing anxiety, doors opening without force, and even resistance appearing briefly in places you thought were settled, because when authority transfers, turbulence follows, but only temporarily. The confrontation is not meant to overwhelm you but to free you, to remove the invisible ceilings you learned to live under, to remind you that caution served its season but courage is required for the next. Somewhere ahead, a soulmate-level connection is being purified of timing issues and emotional residue, so when paths cross, it will feel grounded, mutual, and steady, not urgent or confusing, and until then, solitude is not punishment but preparation. Don't scroll. The courtroom scene fades not with drama but with decision, and Michael's presence remains, not hovering, not intrusive, but attentive, because what comes next requires participation, not passivity, obedience, not obsession, and trust that what has been handled in the unseen will soon reflect in the seen. Time bends again, quietly, favorably, and as you move forward, you are no longer walking toward uncertainty but into alignment, carrying not fear but authority you are only beginning to recognize. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Listen carefully, because after confrontation comes exposure, and exposure is never loud at first. It arrives as subtle awareness, like light seeping under a closed door, revealing shapes before details, and Michael allows you to notice what you once overlooked, not to shame you but to free you. The warning from the dream now sharpens into discernment, and discernment is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It shows you where energy has been leaking, where loyalty was extended without wisdom, where silence protected others at the cost of your own peace. There is a spiritual attachment that has been loosening its grip, not dramatic, not violent, but persistent, something formed during a season when you needed survival more than clarity, and it disguised itself as normal, as necessary, as this is just how life is, but heaven has decided that season has ended. Michael does not rip attachments away recklessly, because sudden emptiness can confuse the soul. Instead he weakens them slowly, replacing dependence with strength, fear with understanding, until one day you realize the hold is gone and you are standing upright without effort. Don't blink. Exposure also reveals a hidden influence around you, not necessarily evil, but misaligned, someone whose words subtly steer you away from your intuition, whose presence makes you second-guess instead of feel grounded, and this influence has survived because it blended in, because it did not demand much, because it felt familiar, but familiarity is not always safety. As this influence comes into light, you may feel a mixture of relief and grief, relief because confusion lifts, grief because release still feels like loss, and heaven honors both emotions without condemning either. Historically, even ancient societies practiced rituals of separation before transition, understanding that crossing into a new phase required leaving something behind, and this wisdom echoes now in your life. Don't scroll. There is also exposure of your own strength, aspects of yourself you underestimated because they developed quietly, patience you thought was weakness, empathy you feared made you vulnerable, restraint you worried limited you, and Michael reframes these traits not as liabilities but as refined tools, qualities that allow you to navigate power without corruption, influence without ego. In the divine realm, authority is measured by self-control, not dominance, and you are being entrusted with more because you have learned when not to act as much as when to move. A financial breakthrough remains in motion, but it will come through alignment rather than impulse, a shift in how you value your time, your skill, your energy, and this realignment will attract provision that feels stable rather than chaotic, earned rather than accidental. Don't blink. Exposure continues as your perception sharpens, and you begin to notice patterns breaking, thoughts losing their hold, temptations losing urgency, because awareness dissolves power, and what once controlled you through habit now struggles to find relevance. You may also sense an internal invitation, a nudge toward purpose that does not come with applause, something that serves quietly but impacts deeply, and this invitation has been waiting for the noise to clear before presenting itself fully. Michael stands close during this phase, because exposure without support can feel overwhelming, but with guidance it becomes liberation, and you are not alone in navigating these shifts. Don't scroll. The dream warned you because exposure requires readiness, and you are now ready to see without collapsing, to release without resenting, to move forward without dragging old weights behind you. As light fills spaces once occupied by uncertainty, peace settles not as absence of challenge but as confidence in direction, and the sword Michael carries remains sheathed not because there is no danger, but because authority has already been established, boundaries already set. What has not reached you yet is now losing access altogether, because exposure changes trajectories, and the path ahead begins to clear, not perfectly, not effortlessly, but truthfully, preparing you for the final shift that will redefine how you understand protection, purpose, and your own divine identity. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Listen carefully, because after exposure comes integration, the quiet phase where truth settles into identity and protection transforms into authority, and Michael now speaks not as one warning you of danger but as one affirming who you are becoming. The dream, the warning, the restraint, the confrontation, and the exposure were never separate events, they were stages of alignment, because heaven does not merely block harm, it prepares heirs, and you are stepping into a season where reaction is replaced by response, where fear is replaced by clarity, and where waiting gives way to wise movement. What has not reached you yet now loses relevance, because its purpose was never destruction but refinement, never punishment but preparation, and the moment you recognize the warning instead of dismissing it, something irreversible shifted in your favor. In the unseen realm, the courtroom closes not with noise but with peace, because decisions that favor destiny do not require celebration, they require execution, and execution happens on earth through daily choices made with awareness. You may soon notice that situations that once triggered anxiety now feel manageable, that temptations that once demanded effort to resist now feel hollow, because power drains from what is understood, and you understand more than you realize. Historically, even ancient military strategy taught that wars were won before battle through positioning and timing, a principle echoed by Sun Tzu centuries ago, and heaven operates with even greater precision, positioning you now so future challenges meet a grounded version of you instead of a reactive one. Don't blink. Integration also touches your sense of self-worth, because protection without identity can create dependency, but identity creates stability, and Michael now affirms that you are not surviving by chance, you are sustained by assignment. The compassion you carry, the restraint you practice, the discernment you are developing, these are not random traits, they are safeguards built into your character so blessing does not corrupt you and influence does not distort you. A soulmate-level alignment remains part of your path, but it will arrive not as rescue but as resonance, two whole lives meeting instead of two wounded halves clinging, and this distinction matters because heaven refuses to build futures on emotional debt. Don't scroll. Financial alignment also integrates here, not as sudden overflow without structure, but as steady provision that respects your effort and multiplies through wisdom, opportunities that feel aligned rather than forced, doors that open without compromise, because what you are becoming cannot be sustained by shortcuts. There is still opposition in the world, still injustice, still challenges, but they no longer define your internal weather, because storms outside do not dictate peace inside when foundations are secure. Michael remains present not as constant intervention but as authority backing your steps, a quiet assurance that you are not walking unguarded. Integration also means release, letting go of the need to prove, to rush, to explain, because destiny does not argue, it unfolds, and those meant to understand will recognize you without persuasion. Don't blink. You may feel moments of stillness now that once felt uncomfortable but now feel restorative, because your nervous system is learning safety without chaos, rest without guilt, and this is evidence that healing has moved beyond awareness into embodiment. The dream warned you because heaven respects preparation, and now preparation gives way to movement, not reckless, not rushed, but intentional, guided, grounded. What has not reached you yet will not reach you at all unless it aligns with who you are becoming, because access is governed by identity, and your identity is no longer negotiable. As the final light settles over this phase, Michael's presence recedes not because protection ends but because confidence begins, and you step forward not as someone waiting to be saved but as someone walking in alignment, aware, protected, and positioned, ready for the unfolding that no longer needs warning because you have learned to listen. The true meaning of this message is not the dream itself, but your response to it. Last night's dream was not just a dream because it activated recognition, and recognition is the doorway through which destiny enters reality. The warning existed because you exist with purpose, and heaven does not warn what it does not intend to preserve. What had not reached you yet was never meant to harm you, but to reveal you, to show you who you are when fear no longer leads your decisions and awareness shapes